Hello everyone, and welcome to the first episode of this hopefully amazing series, a parking system with Laravel, Vue.js, and Stripe. Well, this is the idea so far. So let's dissect the issue first. So a parking system. Let's start with the project requirements first. Right, so what would we need in a project like this? So first of all, I guess we want to list all the garages. Yeah. The app is supposed to be an API, yeah, and Vue.js will be a consumer, but we can use a mobile application or whatever consumer we want. So Laravel will serve as the stateless API. All right. What do we want on each garage? I suppose a name, some coordinates, longitude, longitude. Maybe want to filter by city or something. Availability, I suppose. So let's say we have 100 spots total, and we want to show how many of them are free before the user clicks on the specific garage. So X out of Y. What else? I guess a zip code. And I think that's it so far for this. Right, next on the list. Another functionality, I guess you would want to be able to reserve a spot and also pay for it. So let's try to do that. Before I go further, can you all hear me? Any audio issues? Okay, I'll take it everything's fine. Right, so we want to be able to reserve and pay for a spot. So I guess we can pay online and receive a ticket or a receipt. I was thinking maybe you could be able to pay offline. Like let's say you want to have only an hour. So maybe the price is too small to pay for a Stripe transaction. So I'll leave this as a question mark. I don't know if I'm gonna implement this or not, but all right. Another important aspect of this application, I believe, would be the so high consistency. That's how I would call it. So two people should not be able to reserve the same parking spot at the same time. All right. Now let's think a parking garage. What does it have? It can have multiple parking spots, I suppose. Some of the spots that I was thinking of, like you have a small, you have a medium and large one, and you also have handicapped parking spots. And probably each spot should have a different pricing. And not only different pricing, but different pricing for each garage. Like let's say a garage is located in the middle of the city. I think that should be a little bit more expensive than the one on the outside of the city. Yeah. So I think, yeah. All right, let's let's go from scratch. Sorry about that. It's my first time streaming, so let's redo this. All right, so high consistency. All right, back to the parking spots. Well, at least you got the chance to look at my face a bit more. Now, let's dive into this. All right, so we want small type, we want medium, and we want large types. Yeah? And I mentioned also we want handicapped. So let's keep it like this for now. I also mentioned we want different parking rates. Yeah, so that should be based on the parking spot, based on the garage, and I think it makes sense to have flat rate based on time. I think we will expand on this idea. I think there should be an hourly rate and probably a daily rate. Yeah. So if someone booked for 1.5 days, it should be calculated a bit different. Okay, let's go to chat. Hey everyone. Anyone has any questions so far or any functionalities that you see are missing or any suggestions? All right, so the project requirements will be saved here. I will probably share this with everyone read-only, so you can inspect this later. The repo will go on GitHub. So let's continue with the high-level overview. Yeah. Right, let's draw a shape here, and this will be our consumer. So this can be a mobile application, a web application. Yeah. Next, in the middle, we should have the server. So this is the backend server. We will keep expanding on this structure as we go, but I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. The storage, yeah. So I think we'll use MySQL. I think this is the best option for this type of problem. And as the title of the project says, the payment provider will be Stripe. Let's add some nice arrows here. Okay. And let's add a double arrow here since we will have a two-way communication here. So we'll need to handle the refunds as well, the cancellations of the reservations. So this is the structure so far. If we get to a scaling issue, which is unlikely at the moment, but if we do, I think we could separate the MySQL database into read and writes, separate databases. But I think for now, this should suffice, and we can expand on this later. Okay, so keeping it simple. Next on the list, what should we have? Let's think of the database schema. So let's grab a flowchart, I guess. Yeah. And let's start with the first table. So since we're using Laravel, it comes with the users table by default. So let's have that here with ID. This will be a primary key and an auto increment key. And let's name this one here called users. So usually how I do it is models go with singular and tables go with plural. So the model will be user and the table will be users. Yeah, so let's create a group of this. Okay, let's check the chat. Right. I'm not sure how much of the code we're gonna cover in this session, but I will try to dive a bit into the code at least. Okay, so the users table should have an ID, of course, it's a primary key and auto increment. We also have an email, which is a string, and it should also be unique. We also need a password, and this should be a string as well, and we have it hashed for sure. We have a created ad, and these are the default fields that Laravel comes with. So updated ad, and this is date time as well. Okay, now this is the base. Let's think more about the this app specific logic. So top level will be a garage. So let's copy this over. And as I said, table, what is this? Yeah. So this is garages, plural. ID, of course, primary key, auto increment. From our planning, we also need a name, and that will be a string. We don't need it unique. We also have a zip code, and this will be a string, and this can be unique. Let's keep the created ad, updated ad. We need the coordinates, so we have the option to save them as a JSON in a JSON column, since MySQL 8 supports that. Well, since MySQL 5.7, but I don't think that's not my approach for this problem. So let's put a float for this for the longitude and latitude. Right, and we keep the same created at and updated at columns. All right, what else do we need? Let's take a look at the requirements. All right, so we should be able to have some spots for each garage, but each spot should have a type. So let's go with the type. Yeah. Let's copy this over. And I think I should call this one spot types with model spot type singular. Right, and all this needs is just a name. So let's delete each row. We don't even need the timestamps in this case. And the reason that I use a special column for a special table for this is that in the future maybe we'll have more types, and if we set it as enum now, that can be troublesome, at least in the future, because I know specifically in PostgreSDB, if you add an enum, you cannot remove it afterwards. So that's why we'll think a relationship is better in this case. Okay, one moment. Let's check the chat. 14 viewers. Amazing. Right, let's keep going. So now that we have the spot types, so this is the alternative of using an enum in this case. So let's go with the spots now. So the singular will be spot model, and this will be spots. And here I go again. Spots. All right, so every table I make it makes sense to have a private key and to be auto-incremented. All right, so each spot belongs to a garage. So let's reference the garage ID in here. And this will be a foreign key and also an integer. Now that I think of it, I think it should be a big integer because this is the default behavior from Laravel 6 and up. So yeah, big integer, and this will be unsigned. Okay, now each spot, as I said, is so this will be the column that can be an enum, like the type of the spot. But in this case, I went with the relationship approach. So let's put spot type ID. Yeah. And this will be a foreign key again, big int, and signed. And the spot type ID will reference the ID on the spot types table, and the garage ID will reference the ID on the garages table. Alrighty, what else do we need here? So imagine a parking lot. I guess each spot is on a floor, so it will be an integer, and let's say default is with default 0. Yeah, so maybe it's just a one-level parking lot. So with default 0. And each spot, I guess, should have a number. So number, and again an integer, because as in the case of the floor, it can be -1, -2. So that's why we don't go with unsigned in this case. And we offer the possibility of having negative numbers. I think it makes sense as well. So let's put this as a default of 0 as well. Now, I'll leave this one for now. Also created that, so defaults, and updated that. So why I left this one here? When I said in the requirements, we want to have the availability, like how many of the total are available. And I imagine this will be some kind of relationship in the future. Yeah? Like you have a reservation, and instead of calculating on the relationship and making complex joins and more advanced calculations, I think we can have a computed column here called status. And this can be an enum or this can be a string. So haven't decided yet. But the status can be available or unavailable in cases maybe it's under maintenance or something. Or as I said, we need the high availability. So I imagine when someone clicks on that spot, we should make it temporarily unavailable. So even if the reservation is not created or paid for, we should not be able to let anyone else go with the flow. Okay, so enum or string, again, maybe we'll have more. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Should this be an enum or this should be a string? Hey, Andre. Chlabte, sorry if I didn't pronounce that right. Yes, I am online on Twitch and on YouTube. Andre, hey, what do you think? This should be an enum or this should be a string? I don't think in this case we need. Yeah, it may be boring to create the tables, but this is a project from scratch. So you can't just jump into coding and start coding without a plan. Huh? And what I'm typing here in the tables is not exactly something that I will implement, or maybe will. It's just a blueprint. So I'm just setting the guidelines now and the project scope. So yeah, I could explain them, but I think this is the whole point of this series, to explain the flow of how I analyze a problem and how I dissect it in smaller slices. So I know it can be a bit boring at times, but this is the whole point of the series. Like, you can just I could make this off screen and copy them here, and you can just take a look, or you can just inspect the project. But this is not the scope of this series. All right, so let's continue. If yeah, we'll get into the code as well. Right here. So we have the spots now figured out, hopefully, and let's copy and continue with the reservations. All right, so each reservation will belong to a garage ID. And this again is a foreign key, big int, and unsigned. Spot ID. So of course every reservation will be for a specific spot. So again, foreign key, big int, signed. Alright, so we have the users table. Yes. So let's put the user ID as well. Again, foreign key, big int, and signed. We need a start time or a daytime, I guess. So let's have this daytime. We need an end date, time. Yeah, sounds right. And we need to know maybe if the reservation was paid or not. As I said, the payments will be handled outside of our system. So let's put a record here that it was paid at, and this will be a daytime, and we can have it nullable, as maybe, as I said, we have the option to pay offline, maybe. So let's keep this nullable for now. And again, we need the created at daytime and updated at, again, daytimes. All right, so what else do we need? So I'm thinking now of an application we have in our city, and it allows you to create an account, of course, and then you can add your vehicle. So next time you make a reservation, you get the fields auto-completed. So maybe we want the license plate or some other preferences like the spot type. So I think it makes sense to have a vehicles table. So let's copy an empty or a small table. Vehicles, and again, vehicle would be the singular model, and reservation as well. So in case of vehicles, I said the users will have the vehicles. So a foreign key, big int, and will be an unsigned. Also, we want the license, and this will be a string. I guess with, like, what's the maximum length of a string? Let's put it 15. I'll Google this later. Maybe want this nullable as well, in case you book for someone else or you don't know the license number. So let's have this optional. And let's have this preference as well of spot type ID. Foreign key again, big int, unsigned. And why not create that? Well, let's have maybe you have multiple vehicles and you want to have the latest one added. So yeah, let's have the created at. and the updated at. So, big lines. I think this is good for now. Right. We also said that we want different prices for different spot types, and that will be tied to the garages. So let's make a pivot table between them. One moment, let me check the chat. Reminder set, can't wait for the show to begin. Well, the show is going. Right, so let's make a pivot table between the garages and the spot types. So in case of a pivot table, we go with alphabetical order. So G will be in front of S, spot types. So let's put this garage. So when we make pivot tables, you put the singular. So this will be garage, yes, garage, and then spot type. Yeah, so the name of the first table, garage, singular, and spot type, singular as well. So again, a primary key. We have a reference to the garage. All right, so this will be a foreign key. Big int, and unsigned. Right, this keeps repeating a bit, but it's not a bad thing. So spot type ID again. Let's copy this. And as I mentioned, we want different rates. So hourly rates, daily rates, and we'll handle the calculations. When we make the reservation. So hourly rate, and a good practice would be to save the rate in integers, and that will be cents. Yeah? So you don't want to save floats. I mean, you can do that, but it will be a big pain during the project. I can assure you of that. So take it from me. Go with int. And this will be cents, yeah. And daily rate. And again, int and cents. Right, so let's make some arrows from this one. Goes here. And from this one goes here. Oh, come on. Okay, so we got the pivot table, and let's name this data schema. Right, so we have the requirements, we have the high-level overview, and we have the data schema. Let's take a look again at it. Okay, so I think it's time we can go to the endpoints part of it. So let's try to sketch them. So I'm not sure this will be the final version, but again, it's just sketching now. All right. So usually we'll have public endpoints. Yeah. So these are endpoints that you can access without having an account. Right. Let's have the protected ones. So for these endpoints, you will need to be authenticated. So protected endpoints. Right. And for the last one, I think it makes sense to have some internal endpoints, like listing all the garages. Yeah, we want to have this internal, so only the application that uses it, the consumer, can access it. Even if it's a GET request, we can make some protection. So we can allow others to see. We can maybe provide an API at a later point. But for now, let's protect these routes, and our consumer should be the only ones that are able to access them. So let's call them internal endpoints. Okay. So the public endpoints. Okay, let's take a look at the chat again. Do you have anything else to add to the previous sections? Okay. I guess not. Let's continue with the endpoints then. So what would we want with what kind of endpoints would we want here? So we need a register endpoint because we have the users, and we need them to be able to authenticate. And as I said, the authentication will be based on a JWT token. I was thinking of using Sanctum. Yeah, I think I will be using Sanctum. So let's go with the register endpoints first. So we need to be able to create an account, and that will be a post of. Let's group them under auth. This will be register. And what do we need for the register? We'll need some params. So the params in this case should be we need an email, of course. We need a password, and we need a password confirmation. Do we want a password confirmation? Yes, no, maybe. I think usually it's a good practice to go with the password confirmation on the server. So let's keep this one for now. Right, and then we also want to log in or to issue a token. So let's go with post at auth token. And what do we want in this case? So suppose this should be email and password. And what do we want for the return type? I guess we can have the bearer token, so token, and also the token type in case we will have different authentication types later. So token type. The naming can change in the future. Okay, so I think these are all the public endpoints that we need in this case. What about the protected endpoints? So when you are authenticated, you want to be sure that you can get the authenticated user. So that usually is a get at me. Yeah, that doesn't need any parameters. It's a get request. But what do we want? We want to no. What we want back? I think we want to. I think we'll go with resources. So let's say we want a user resource, and the user resource will contain the name and the email for now. Okay. Also, we want to be able to make a payment. Yeah. So let's have a post request /payment. And let's think about the payload of this. I think we can just get away with the reservation ID. Yeah. Right, and what do we want back? I guess a confirmation status that everything was fine. Yeah, so 200 or I suppose. Yeah, just a response, normal response. Alrighty. We want to be able to create reservations. So let's also do a post at reservations. And this should contain, I believe, just the spot ID, because we can grab the garage ID from the spot. So let's comment this here. Okay. And what should we get back? Yes, we want the reservation ID. Yeah, and this is what we'll use here. So let's drag this down. So before we make a payment, we need a reservation. Yeah? So we have a spot. We want to pay for the spot, but first we need to create the reservation. We set the... yeah, I guess we can put here more stuff. Like edit, start time. We can put the end time. And what else did we have in the structure of the reservation? So we have this spot, but we also can get the garage. Start, end. Yeah, that's enough. So start and end. Alright, so we also want to modify the reservations, but they should not be able. I think we should not provide that option if the reservation is already paid for. But let's keep that as an open option. So we want to update the reservation. So let's have a patch, and we want to make this RESTful. So we're not using GraphQL in this case. So I'm gonna try to keep the best REST practices. So reservations, and then reservation ID, and we will update this. And yeah, what should we be able to do here? So let's send the parameters of start time and end time, and we'll think about the ability of modifying it if we paid or not. But for now, let's keep it open. Okay, yes. We should also be able to delete a reservation and refund someone. So let's make a new endpoint here. And this will be a delete at reservations, then reservation ID, and I think that's enough. And we want just a status code back from this. Okay, so we can create one, we can edit it, we can delete it. What else do we want? I think we also want to be able to pass a reservation ID and get the price that we can display in the front end. So yeah, that should be a protected endpoint. And let's make this on here. Yeah, let's make a post. Calculate payment, and this should take just the reservation ID as a param. And what should we get back? Just, I guess, an integer. So a response that will contain an integer of cents. What do you think is the best approach? To return cents from the backend, or should we format it? Audience, please. Do you think the price should be formatted? Like human readable dollars or whatever currency we want? Or should it go with cents and let the consumer format it? Cents? sense. Right. What else do we want here? I think that's all for the protected endpoints. And as I mentioned, we also want the internal endpoints. So we want a list of all the garages, and also I guess we want the free spots of a specific garage. So the garage listing, yeah, let's build this, and we'll talk as we go. So get at garages, and this should return all the garages, yeah, with, so I guess it will be a resource collection of all the garages with the free spots available and total spots available. So garages, and one more. I think we should be able to filter this as well by a specific garage, and we'll get all the spots of that garage. Yeah. So let's make another one. So get at garages, and then we want to go to a specific garage and get the free spots. And maybe we also want the ability to filter the free spots by type. So we also had the spot type ID, and let's make this an optional parameter for now. Right. So let's make some comments here as well. That should return. Yeah. Should this return a specific one garage? Yeah, should return a garage resource. With the available spots, or should this return spots resource collection? I think we should, no, I think this should be like this. There should be spots. We want all the spots of a specific garage. So garage, specific garage, and maybe we also want the status in here. So I think it was status, right? So I'm going with this project as a, so I'm building it with you now. So I don't have all the details, and I don't have it all laid out. So you're always free to give suggestions. Right, sense. Thank you, Andre. Okay, so what about this endpoint, Andre? Because I'm having a bit of doubt here. What should the endpoint be? Should it be spots of a specific garage, of a specific status? So I think that's how we called it. So on the spot, we have the status. Yeah, let's go with this. Do you see anything wrong with this approach? So spots of a specific garage, status, and filter. Okay, let's keep it like this for now. Alright, so I think now that we have all this laid out, we can start some coding. And the plan for today was getting all this for you and try to iterate on some of the aspects here. And then set up the project, upload it to GitHub, set up the database. I think we'll use Docker for this. Locally, I'm going to use Valet to serve it. So let's go with it. So yes, Laravel new, and let's call this parking system. We can specify GitHub here, and we can also specify the branch as main. So let's go with main. So what this parameter does here is, if you have GitHub set up correctly in your terminal, it should create a private repo for you with a branch main. So let's see if it did what we want. Guess it did not, but the project is installed, so let's go into the project. So parking. We are using PHP 8. So let's composer install everything. Okay, that's installed from the Laravel new, and that's npm installed in. Okay. While we wait for this, I think the initial. Yeah, let's wait for this to finish first. So let's link it with Valet. Parking. So now if we go to the browser, we should go to parking.test, and we should have the welcome Laravel. So that's fine. Let's go and start with the Docker compose file. So I'm gonna copy a snippet that I use in most of my projects, make file of starting, shutting down the containers and everything. And first of all, let's open the project in an IDE. So my IDE of choice is PHP Storm. And I'm using the Laravel plugin. So let's sync that here. Is the font big enough for everyone? Right, PHP 7.3. We want PHP 8. Yeah, let's go with 8. And as I said, we want to push this to GitHub as well. So let's make a GitHub repo. Let's call this parking and parking system. Yeah, let's let it be parking system. This will be public because I want to build this publicly with you. And let's create it. Right. So if we go in our terminal here and do git status, yeah, we have this one going here. We want to ignore the .idea. So this is the generated directory from the IDE. We don't want here. Off the bat, when I start a new project, every time I get this one, Berry IDE. So this will help with auto-completion, with the facade typing and everything. So let's plug this in. Okay. So before I go on with the code, do you have any questions so far? Oh, so I know this stream has a bit of delay. Let's try this. Nice. Okay, so let's keep going. We installed this Berry IDE, and I got this small script of helping me. That helps me. And let's copy this over. So we want to include this in the script section of the composer.json file. We call this IDE helper, and this will bundle two PHP artisan commands, and this will generate the helper files for the IDE. So let's save this and do composer IDE helper. And this will generate 2 files. And there we go. And we don't want this to be in Git, so let's also add them to the ignore file. So IDE, helper, and PHP store meta, PHP. Okay. I also said we want to use Docker for MySQL. Like, even to this point, I don't have MySQL installed locally. So let's put a Docker compose.yaml file. And we also want a make file here, because I don't want to remember all the commands to start and stop the containers. So again, I am going to copy the make file commands from here. This is something that I do in all the projects. And this will Docker compose, and it will take the composer file from here. It will build all the services, yeah, and then we can start them without recreation, and stop or delete them. All right, so let's start building on this Docker compose file. So I mentioned that we need MySQL, and my preferred choice will be MySQL 8. So let's start with a version number, 3.7, and let's list these services. So this will be the MySQL service. I'm gonna look here on the left for some hints, because you don't need to remember all of this. But this is how you would go about setting up a new Docker Compose file. Alright, so we're gonna use MySQL, and we want the, let's check the latest version. Okay, I think I closed the stream by mistake. So let's get back to it. Okay, am I back online? You see my screen? Okay. So let's go to... please someone confirm that the screen is back online. The stream is back online. So Docker Hub, and cool, thank you. Alright. I'm gonna grab MySQL latest version, and that will be 8.0.25. Yep. Let's continue. Let's give this container a name. And this will be the project name, so parking and MySQL. With the environment, we want the this one doesn't give me the environments, but so this will be the MySQL database. Let's call this parking. MySQL root password, and let's type something gibberish. Okay, I'm not sure if this will not make a... Alright, so let's keep it like that. Okay, MySQL user. So this will be parking user. Let's go into application user. And MySQL password. And let's generate a password. Or, yeah, let's just generate one. Right, there's a little issue here with the latest version of MySQL, and that's you need this this command to be able to authenticate. I'm not sure if it persists in the latest versions of Laravel, but I know this this used to be the issue before. Next, let's set up the port forwarding. So let's go with ports. Let's put a random port here so it doesn't collude with anything I have locally. I don't think this one is used. And this is the local port, so this is the port that will be exposed on my machine, and this will grab the port from inside the container Yeah, so MySQL runs on 3306 by default, and I'm gonna pipe this to 3382 on my local machine. I think this should be like this. Next, we want the volumes because we want to have persisted data on restart. So volumes. Let's call this parking MySQL. Yeah, the name is not. It doesn't matter what I have here. It doesn't have to be the same. This is just what the volume will be called, and this volume will map to data MySQL inside the container. All right, and a good habit that I built is always to include the services in a network. So maybe we'll want to extend this to multiple services later. So let's make a network, and let's put this parking project. All right, so that's the first service. I don't think we need any other services for now. So let's just declare the volumes. And so the volumes will be this one. And this will be a local driver. And then the networks also should be defined here. And I called it parking project. And this will also, well, I think the driver is called bridge. Right, so with a bit of luck, we should be able to start this container and have MySQL available at port 3358 with these credentials. So first of all, let's see if I have any containers started, and since I do, so docker kill, all right. There was a command to stop all of them, but I can't remember it off the top of my head now. So docker ps, wait. Okay. And this one as well. Hey Rico, how's it going? And this one. So I don't think I should have any more. Docker ps. Okay, and nothing up. Let's do make start. So make will take the command from here now, and this will build up the containers and start them. No such Docker composer. I don't think that's the correct name. Docker compose.yaml. So if we do now make start, great. This build the container and hopefully started it up. And as we can see here, it's available on port 3382, and it's mapping to the 3306 from inside the container. All right. So I'm gonna use the built-in database explorer because we're gonna do some manual exploring as well. And let's copy some of the credentials from the Docker compose file. All right. So what we want is the MySQL password, and let's add the connection. Okay, so this will be parking localhost. This is localhost. The port we have is 3382. The user is application user. Password we just copied. The database is parking. So with some luck, we should be able to test the connection, and success. Voila, we are connected. Now, I know a little issue with this is that even though I pasted the, it's fixed in the latest version. So before, even if you added the database name here, the schema was not shown. So we have the schema listed here. All right, let's configure the env variables. So the database is parking. This is application user, and this will be the password. And the port is, forgot again, this. So we're gonna make a direct connection to this port. Everything else, okay, parking system. Okay, everything else stays the same. So by default, if we take a look in the database directory, give me a second. If we take a look in the migrations, we have the users table. Let's close this one for now. And this is the these are the default fields. I don't think we're gonna need anything changed here. Yeah, this is the password resets and the failed jobs. So let's try to migrate this. So I have an alias set here. This is PAM. This is PHP artisan migrate. So now if we take a look in the database and refresh, we can see the columns here, the tables here. Alrighty. So now that we have the users, no, first let's set up the testing. So I noticed something recently in the latest versions of PHP Storm. If you open XML files on Linux and you try to edit them, the IDE crashes. So let's open this in something else. So we want to modify that file. And is this one? Well, not with this. Let's try to bring a text editor in here. And let's open. Oh my god. Okay. I hate your PHP Storm sometimes. So what we want here is to use an SQLite database for speed. We can test this later with direct MySQL testing container, but I think this will do for now. This will give us the speed we want, and being in memory, you'll see how fast it is. Okay, so everything else will leave the same. Okay. With these settings, I think we should be able to run PHP artisan test. Yes, and we got the tests going. So instead of using the command line to run the tests, I'm gonna use the context, in context or built-in PHP Storm to run the specific tests. Yeah. So let's say we go to this one, a unit test. Yeah. And instead of going with PHP artisan test and then filter this, yeah, so you can do this, or you can do Control Shift and F10. All right, so let's assign the interpreter for this project. So let that be 8. And I don't think we need anything else, but let's allow the parallel test. Why not? Okay, let's apply and run. So now we are able to run the test directly from the IDE. Yeah, so run. Nice. Now, if you want to run the test for a specific for a full test, yeah, you can go in the context of the class, and you can run this one here. So this one is not fixed for the project. So let's set this up. Okay, so with some luck, this should not squeak anymore. And let's try again. All right, and let's try a different test. Okay, so at this point we have the project running. We have the database set up with with Docker. So a little trick with this makefile. Now you have a Docker PS. You see your containers running. You do your make stop. Now this will stop the containers. So no more services running. And again, Docker start. This will make start. And this will start the containers again. Alright, so pretty nice little setup. Let's start building the endpoints and making some tests as well. So I'm not gonna go full full TDD, but I am gonna take some ideas from TDD. Right, so in the let's delete the base. Oh, let's not delete them for now. So let's make a test. Let's put them in the. Yeah, this will be an auth directory, and let's call the test auth test. Is this the right name for it? Auth test. No, I think we want to separate the register from login. So let's keep it in auth directory, but have it authentication. And all the tests have to end with test, because this is the configuration we have in our PHP XML file. Right, so that's one. Have an auth authentication test. Great. And the next one should be the registration. Okay. Let me check the comments. All right, no comments. Okay. So let's go in the registration test. As I said, or as I mentioned, we want to use Sanctum to issue tokens, and we already have the users table. So let's grab Sanctum first. I think I have it open here. Okay, installation. Let's grab this one. Okay. Okay, what else we have here? You should publish. Yes, we want to do that. So what this has done is it created the migration, I think it's just one, yeah. And this is the personal access tokens. And we also have the config file of this package. And let's see what options do we have in here. So this is for stateful. We don't want that for now. Yeah, I don't think we need to do anything here. Okay, so we got Sanctum installed. Let's create the endpoints, shall we? So in the routes, we have this user. So I think this is something. This is similar to what I've said with the route /me. Let's keep this for now, but let's keep it commented. We'll test it later if my implementation fails. Right, so we say we want the public endpoints first. Yeah, so this will not be grouped in the Sanctum auth middleware for now. So let's just make a post, and let's say we want to group them into auth and register. And this should go to some controller. I think it should be auth controller that we don't have yet. And the method should be register. Yeah, so let's create a controller. No, not this one. So you can do PHP artisan make controller, or if you use the handy extension, you can do controller. And we want to group them into, yeah, we want to have API routes, maybe in case we'll have some non-API routes later. And let's call this auth, yeah, auth controller. Single action, no, I think we'll put the register in here. And let's import it. So we have the namespace imported at the top here. And we also want the login. So I think we should not call it login, but issue token or something. I know it's not the most RESTful thing, but as I said, we might have different authentication types later. So let's have this token for now. Alright, let's check the chat a bit. Do you see anything wrong with having both login and register in the auth controller? All right, let's keep it like this for now. We can refactor later, and this is the benefit of having this section also tested, because I already made the test for it. Once we change this implementation, we'll also have the test to back us up. Yeah. So even though I think this is a good approach now, I might change my mind later. So let's have this token here. Alright, so let's look at what we get as a suggestion here in Sanctum. So we have the migrations. Okay, I think this is if you want to use, yeah, if you want to use it stateful, like with a session, but we don't want it in this case. We want it stateless. Okay. Issue token. Right. So this is one one trait that we have to attach to the users model. So let's go to users. User. Yeah. So the model is singular, and let's use this trait as API tokens. And I think this should be, yeah. It's part of the Sanctum package. Okay. Great. Back here, we should be able to create the user and issue the token. Well, this is just issuing the token without creating the user, so alright. Yes, let's implement it ourselves. So auth controller. Yeah, we want to register here and we want to accept some data. And instead of using normal request and doing the logic in the controller, we're gonna separate this in a form request. So let's do PHP artisan. Well, let me actually check if we have the form request on this plugin. So form, yes, awesome. How do we wanna call this? Register form request. Yeah. So this should handle the validation of the data that we send to the register endpoint. And let's keep the authorization for now. Alright, so I know this will be an array every time. And let's see what do we want here. So I believe we have just the name. One moment. Let me check the comments if we add it. Okay. So the name. The name should be, I think my ID is blocked. Awesome. So my ID froze. I'm gonna try to fix that. Oh, unblocked. Awesome. Yeah. So the name, we also want the email, so accept it. And we want the password. And we also want the password to be confirmed. So let's put password confirmation. And this should also be an array. Alright, so let's think about the name. This would be required because everyone has a name. There should be a string always with, how do you say this, with maximum? Max. One moment, let's see how the maximum is. I think it's just a separate rule. Yeah, it's a separate rule. Okay, so max 255, because this is a string type. Okay, the email should be required, of course. Should be a string. We should validate it to be an email. And should also have it, and set a maximum on it of 255 again. And this should be unique, but we want it unique on the users table. Yeah. The password should be required. Should be a string, and in the in the latest Laravel version, they have this new password validation rule, and let's set a minimum of 8 characters. Yeah, and let's make it also uncompromised. So this is something pretty cool. If your password has, if this password has been leaked before, yeah, you will not be available to use it here. It's just a security concern. And let's not bother with, so yeah, other parameters this one accepts. You could do stuff like, yeah, message, letters, mixed case numbers, and all kinds of jazz, but let's keep it simple for now. And this will be required and confirmed. So password confirmation, if you have it confirmed, this will look for the key password, and they should be the same. So this is what confirm says. All right, so it's authorizing, it's returning an array. Okay, let's go in the auth controller and pop it in here. So register from request, let's grab the request, and just for our sanity, let's see that we didn't do anything bad until now. And we should be able to dump this request here. So we should grab all the data. If it's valid, we will dump it. If not, we should get the validation errors. You know, so let's use Postman for this. Right. So parking.test. I believe so. Let's take a look here. Yeah, we got our register and token routes, and we want to post to this endpoint now with the data that we specified in here. So API auth and register. This should be a post request with the headers. So let's set the headers. We want to accept JSON, and the content type we'll also send JSON. Right. So now if we, with any luck, if we send this here, we should be able to get validation errors. Yes. And we do. So the given data is invalid, name is required, email, password, and the confirmation is required. So let's start adding data. And let's see what we want first. Name. Okay, let's go with this. Email. Right. Password. Right, so as I said, we're using this password uncompromised, so let's try something simple like password or password 123. Yeah, so if we don't put the confirmation, now we should get the. So first one is it appeared in a leak, in a data leak, so we should change the password, and then the confirmation that it doesn't. Confirmation. So now if we put this one down here, we should have just one. What am I doing wrong? The password confirmation does not match. Let's check out the rule. So is this a Stack Overflow? I think I should. That's not the way you should do it. I think you can just use confirmed and you don't have to send that here. So let's test that. So no password confirmation, but just include that here. Alright, so now we should get rid of this. Okay, we should have just one error, and that's the data lake, so that's fine. And if we've removed the password confirmation now, yes, we need it. Okay, let me check the messages. Alright, so sorry. So let's use something like this. I don't know if it's okay. Awesome. So we got the data. Now it's being verified. It's being validated, and we can go to the implementation of the actual user registration. So back in the auth controller, let's assign this to a user. Let's try first this. User create. All right, so I think we should generate the eloquent helper code again. And this will take the data from the migrations and it will give me auto suggestions, hints. And let's do this again. So now, with some luck, we should be able to do create. Awesome. And we should also get auto-completion based on the migration files. So now we have a name, then we have an email, and we have a password. Okay. So the name, let's grab the name from the request. So request get name. Yeah, and the nice thing about this plugin that you also have the auto completion from the form request. So that's pretty cool. Okay. Has this multi-cursor? Wow, this is not what I wanted. Yeah, I think this just did it worse. Made it worse. Okay, email and request password, but instead of storing the password in plain text, we want to hash it. So let's use the hash from the facade and let's make a password, hash password. And we're gonna grab this one. And so one issue that I have here is when we hit the register endpoint, do we want to return the token directly, or do we want to return a success message and then do the authentication in a separate request? Anyone has any opinions on this? Yeah, so hit register, return token, or should we return the user or the success message? I think this breaks the REST principles of this, but again, let's do it for now, and we can refactor it later with the tests. Okay. So let's create the token, but let's check the documentation, how it's done. Nope, not this day. Right. Right. So we need to issue a token. So we need the user, and we got that because we just created it. And then we just need to create a token with the name. Okay, let's do that. And then we need to get the plain text token back. Okay. So let's assign this to a user because we need it now. Let's generate the token. So we grab the user, we use the create token, and I think this was our token. And we want to have the plain text token. So at this point, we should have a token here in. Did we migrate? We didn't migrate. So let's migrate, and we migrated the missing table that we generated from the from Sanctum's package. So now we should have the password, the personal access tokens here. So after we create the token, we should have a token saved in this table, and now we should return the response back. So return response. We want a JSON response, and this should contain the access token, and this should be the token, and next should be the token type, I believe, because we should yeah, I think we should be able to have this as flexible as possible, so in case we want different type of tokens, we'll include it here. Okay, now the JSON response will return a 200 by default, but since we created a resource, we created a user, I think we should return 201. Yeah. So let's try to hit that endpoint and see if we did something right. So register, we have this, boom, look at that. So we got the access token, we have the token type, and we can already use this to access protected routes. So this user can be found in the users table, the password is hashed as expected. We don't need the remember token, and we don't need the verification because we're not implementing email verification. We want the users to be able to use the application as easy as possible. Right. So now if we let's test one more aspect. So I said that we want the users to be unique by email and we specify that here. So now if I try to create a new account with the same data, we should get a validation error. And we do. And this email has already been taken. Let's make a test for this. And yeah, and stay up to date with the tests as we implement this functionality, since this will be a critical functionality of this app. We need to get it tested. Yeah, so let's go in the auth, and we can delete this demo tests, and let's go to the registration test. We can close the database, we can close this, and let's have this open. Okay. Right. The first test, I believe, should be that we can create a new user at this endpoint. So let's do that. So each test should start with test, or you can put the annotation. So if you generate the PHP docs and you put test in here, then you can do something like it does something. Yeah, but I prefer the shorter version of it. So test it does something, and what it does: test it allows to create new users. Right. So instead of doing a simple get, we can do a API get, or how is it called? Get. No, we need a post. Yeah, and we need to post some JSON. So if you do a normal post and then you have validation errors, then you don't get the correct response back. So with post JSON, it will be handled correctly. All right, so the URL we want to test is API auth register. Yeah. So what do we want to send? We want to send some data in a payload. So let's call this. Let's just type it. So random email, or we can actually use faker in here. So use with faker, and let's generate some data. So this faker, safe email, yeah, safe email. Then we need a name, and this will be this faker name. I think it should be a function, and a password. And this, we want this to be a success test. So let's put a good password. So let's do a string random of 10 characters. And I think this should, let's see what we have here. So when we do this, no such table users. Okay, I know what the issue is. We should also use refresh database straight. And it's already imported here. So now that now if we run this test, we should be able to get some data back. Also we have the password confirmation, of course. So let's put this here. Password. And this will be the password. So now if we run this test again, we should see the access token and the token type. So that's nice. So this is the success, the success route. And what else do we want to assert? And we can put this in line even. So we want to assert the status, and I believe we put the status of 201. We also want to assert what what do we want? We want to assert the structure that we get this, that we have an access token and we have a token type. So I believe this is called assert JSON fragment, or no, it's assert JSON structure. So we want an access token, and we also want token type. And what should happen after we make this request? So the happy path is that we also want, so we want to assert that something was added in the database, and we need to do this outside of the request. So this assert database has, do we want has? Yeah, let's make it has. So the table users should have a column, an entry with email, and we want this email here. So we want an entry with this data. Yeah. And we also want to, can I just inline this? Assert database count, and we want the table users, and we want just one user created. Yeah. So let's align this nicely. Okay. Running this test should still be a success. And it is. And let's try to change something in the auth controller, for example. Instead of returning, or let's not return this blur. So if we do that and we run the test again, we have a failed test that the token type is not on this array. That is correct. And I think this is a pretty small, I guess. It's a small test that will cover a lot of cases. What else do we want? So we want to not allow multiple emails. Yeah, so we want to check for duplicate emails. So it does not allow duplicate emails. So first of all, let's check the user factory. So because we'll need this later. So the verified at, we can set this to null as we're not using it at all. And the remember token is also null. And this is the password. And let's have a big crypt instead of password. Because this will not be fine. Because we have the breach test. So let's make a random password. So yeah, bcrypt str random of 10 characters. Yeah, and with a remember token, and we don't need anything else from here. So what we can do now is we can make a user without hitting an endpoint. So let's do that here. User equal user factory. And let's create a user. And we need an email, or we can let it decide what kind of email. We want to have a specific email because we want to test against it. Yeah. So let's put a test email at mail.com, and this should be in an email. Yeah, like that. And I don't think we need anything else in here because the password will be auto-generated, but we don't need the password for now. We're just testing the duplicate emails. Right, let's make a request. So let's save this in a response, and let's do again with this. Let's copy this from here. Okay, auth register, and instead of using this email, Not sure if this will work, so let's just copy this here. Yeah, so we put the email, we put a name, a password, and a password confirmation. And what we're testing now is that it doesn't allow for the email. And while at it, yeah, I think that's enough. That's enough. So let's do a response here. Let's see what we get first if we try to do this. So test email, yeah, and let's dump the response. So that's as expected. The data was invalid. And let's try to assert this. So how would we do that? I think this is the case that we want to assert the JSON fragment. Yeah, let's do that. Assert JSON fragment, and in this case, let's see the expected. Okay, so it's data makes message. Yeah, so I guess we want this to be email. So that's what we're looking for. And the message is, so this is what we want. We want to check the actual headers. And we want this message here. Yeah. And do we want anything else in here? Do you want to check this? Okay, let's check this one as well. So message. Okay, so I'm putting this in an array because this is nested inside. And this is not. So that's why this is an array and this is not. Right, so what else do we want to assert? So in this case, we only want one user in the database. And the second call, well, the actual call should not make a new account. Yeah? So we should check this assert database count. It should be only one, and not table. This should be users and count of 1. And also assert database has. So I think it's the same test from here. Yeah. Right. And let's put email here so we don't repeat it multiple times. Right. Okay. And okay. There should be only one entry in the users table, and it should be the one that we generated with a factory. So let's run the test. And that's not correct. Enable define JSON fragment message. I think the message was the given data was invalid. Yes. Genius. Okay, so now we know for sure that we'll not get duplicates. And let's also test. Do we want more tests? Should we continue with testing the register endpoint, or should we just jump to the login part? Login versus register? I take it you are all bored by now. All right, so let's just jump to the login section of it. So let's go to the API, and we have the authentication endpoint by token, and this should go to the token function, and also always this should return a JSON response. So yes, we can pop this on here, This return type is specific to, I guess, PHP 7 plus. I'm not sure if it's, yeah, it's PHP 7 plus or 7.4 plus. A neat feature with PHP 8 is that you can do stuff like this, and you can return JSON response or null, but well, in this case we want just a JSON response. Right, so add the login. What do we want to do with the login? Yeah, let's make a login form request. I think we can use this one again. Form request or token form request. Yeah, issue token form request. Token issue form request. Token form request. Right, and we want to have an email and we want to have a password. So email required, and you can put this with pipe, but I prefer the array notation. So required string max 255, and we also want a password. So password required string and 255. Okay, returns array. Now we can use this form request in our token. So token form request, and at this point I know that we have an email, we have a password provided. So let's try to authenticate the user with those. So if, and yeah, the user should already exist. So auth set attempt. And let's check the documentation exactly for auth attempt. Well, let's try to guess it then. Auth attempt, and we want to pass the email and the password. So let's get them from the request, and you can use request, and you can grab only some keys. And in this case, you can do request all, since we have just the email and password, but I want to be specific about this. So let's just pass the email and password. And auth attempt will check it against, so this will be a string, and you will compare it against the hashed version saved in the database. All right, so what happens if we don't have this in the database? If we have the wrong credentials, I think we should just return response JSON. We don't want to validate the email that it exists in the database, because we also don't want to tell them if the email is registered with us or not, so to prevent brute force attacks. Yeah, I think it makes sense. So let's return the JSON response with a message and say invalid login details. Well, let's make sure that I don't say anything stupid and say invalid login details code 401, of course. So 401, and let's continue outside of this. So now we know that the user exists and the credentials are correct. So let's try to get the user. Yeah. So grab the user from the users table. Where email request get email. Okay, and we do first or fail. In this case, it should not be failing because we already attempting here, but let's keep it safe. First or fail. Then we have to generate the token, and we're gonna do the same thing like here. So we generate the token and have it in plain text. That's fine. And I think we can return the same thing here. But as I said, this is to do homework. So this will be my homework if we should leave it like this or not. Okay, so now we should be able to log in a user by email and password, and we should return a token, and we can use that token to do requests against the protected routes. So let's go in here and make that route that we want. So I'm gonna put the test route in here, and let's include it in a middleware. Just one moment, I'm gonna check the chat again. Move on. Okay, let's move on. Alright, so we put a middleware on this, and the middleware is auth sanctum. And this is a group with a function. Let's create that route get here. So this will be a me route, and let's create the should we create a separate controller for this? All right, let's create a specific controller for this. So controller, and this should be an API in the API directory, and it should be a users controller. Yeah, and this should be me. And it should not have any request data. So it's just a normal request. So we're gonna use the HTTP request, and we can return, as I said, we want to return a user resource. So let's also create a resource. So create a JSON resource, and this will be user resource. Okay. And this should return the name. This will be this name and the email. Email. Okay. Let's clean up. And we have a user resource. So if we did this right, we should be able to return a new user resource, and we can pass the user that we can grab from the request. I am sure this will have a user, so this will also be a user resource. I am sure this will have a user because of this middleware. Yeah, so it needs to pass the sanctum in auth middleware to get to this route. Yeah, so there's the user controller and me. Okay, so at this point, we should be able to go in Postman, make a route, make a request, and should be similar to this, but this should be the login endpoint. And I didn't duplicate it, so again we need to put the accept JSON and the content type JSON. So if we do this, what is this? What did I do wrong? Ah, yeah, I called it token. So yeah, let's have a token. Right. So we got the email and the password. They acquired, of course. Let's pass them here. We know that, well, let's make sure that it's the right one. Yeah, so I use the main email. Right. And I believe the password was password like this. Oh, this should not be in the params. So this should be in the body, and this should be a form data. So let's move this here. Email and password. And let's remove this too, because we do not need them here. Okay, so if we do this request now, we should get the auth token back, and we do. And with this token, we can go to the me route. And let's duplicate it this time, so we don't have to type the headers again. And this will be a GET request to auth. Did I put that under auth as well? Let's make sure of that. So this is just API and me. Okay, so API me. Now, if I don't include the authorization bearer token, then this should not allow me and should return 401 of unauthenticated. But if I include the authorization header bearer and then the token that was generated from the previous request, we should be able to get the user back, and it's a success. So let's write some tests for the login logic, for the token issue logic, and then we can call this a day. Okay, so let's close all the tabs and let's grab one of this. Is this test failing? No. Okay, all the tests of this class pass. And let's use the refresh database and faker. Let's bring them to the authentication test. Include them here. Public function test. Success. Authentication. Or test we can test can authenticate user test token issuing generation. Yeah, this is the hardest part of programming, trying to come up with function names. Test token generation. Yeah, let's do it like that. Okay, so let's grab the same logic from here. We will post some JSON. But first we need to create that user. So user equal user factory create, and let's put whatever. Let's just grab a random email. So email, we'll assign this directly to the variable email and call the faker and say save email. And also we want a password that we need to know in order to authenticate with it. So password Let's decrypt the same password that we had here. So password. Okay. Or I guess we can do this password equal str random of 16. And oh, this is the default, so let's keep it like that. So we have now the email, we have the password, and let's call the endpoint. Post auth token. The email should be email. Name, we don't need it. Password, we don't need it. And the password should be used from here. So this should return a 200, I believe, yes. So auth controller, so token. This should return a 200. Or it's the default one, so let's leave it out. So search status 200, and let's see the payload, and then we can check some more assertions. Let's do this as well. Okay, so we have a token, so that's a success. Yeah, let's end with this. I think this is good enough. So we don't need the user, and we don't do this anymore. And we also want to check for this structure and the status. It's a 200. Okay. So it was a success. We have a 200 and we have this structure. Run the test. Yes, everything is fine. I believe we can even click on the folder and do this. And now it will run all the tests from this directory. And you can do that on this level as well. But we don't have any tests in unit yet. That will be for the next lessons, for the next series, episodes. Okay. I think this is a good time to stop. Get instead of post. Yes. I don't think it's a get JSON, I think it's just get. But why does it work with... No, this is fine. This is post JSON because we want to post this. Sorry, Andre, what do you mean? Where should I have get instead of post? Sorry, I think I missed that message. Did I miss any verbs? Okay, we can remove this. And we don't need the request. So post, get. Okay, that looks fine. That looks fine. Sorry. Another context. Okay. So let's push this to GitHub. So we do git status. Okay, we have a few files. So git add all, git commit, and some base setup, register, token issuing, and tests, and auth tests. Okay, let's grab the... Do I have this open? Yes. And let's add this. I think I already have a branch, so yes. And let's push. Oh. Let me grab this from the password manager. Okay. Let's check that we don't have any logs in here. So we have a fresh app, and then we have the base setup. And now if we check the browser, we should have this here. And we do. Okay. I think this wraps it for this episode. Yeah, delay. Okay, so this was my first stream. I hope you guys liked it. Sorry for some mistakes. I'll try to improve. Okay, thank you very much. Ciao, ciao.